What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and today we're going to be talking about investment banking and how to get into it in 2021. You can use this in 2022, 23, 24, 2030. It's going to be the same steps, but I want to give you some of the general things that you need to get into investment banking if you're planning on taking that path. So investment banking is one of those glorified finance positions, only because, it requires a lot of skill, a lot of technical skills, and also it's really competitive because anyone who's really smart tends to go into investment banking. And you also work a lot of hours, looking at 100 hours a week. You might work more, you might work less, but you're going to be working way over 80 hours a week. If you're going to be working more than 80 hours a week and you don't like what you're doing, then that's not going to be a pleasant experience. So if you are going into this for the money, I recommend not to, because it's probably a waste of time. You're probably going to quit after your first week at investment banking when they make you work 100 hours in a week or something like that. But it does pay a lot of money. So if you're looking at entry-level positions, let's say you just graduated from college and you get hired as an analyst, I think this is the lowest position that they have, or most companies have. You're looking at about from 85K to 100K, which is a lot of money for someone that just graduated from college. All right, so the first tip is going to be getting the job experience. So if you look at a lot of entry-level positions, you see that they say you need 1 to 2 years of work experience in that field. And most of the time, a lot of people don't have this because during that time, that's when they were getting the education in college. So one way to get experience is going to be by getting an internship, right? So if you do internship, those are going to count as work experience. So if you work a part-time job, that's going to count as work experience. But when it comes to investment banking, it is important to know that you need finance experience or accounting experience, right? Because those are the types of jobs or internships that are going to count towards your experience that can be applied to the job. So if you were applying to investment banking and if you worked at McDonald's, not that there's anything wrong with McDonald's, but that's just not going to count when it comes to the 2 years of work experience, right? All right, so since investment banking internships are really competitive, how do you get one? So one of the things that I recommend, or one of the things that works for everybody, is networking with alumni, right? So if you reach out to someone who graduated from your university and they're working maybe in investment banking or an industry that's related to that, if you reach out to them, they're going to most likely help you because they know what you're going through. They probably had to go through the same thing, and they usually want to help other students. And another way you can network is by going to networking events. So if you go to college, maybe your college has a college of business and they might have a networking events for finance. That is a good way to meet alumni that are working in investment banking, and they're more than willing to help. That's why they come do these events. And you can also use platforms like LinkedIn. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. All right, so let's say you go to a networking event or you meet an alumni that's recruiting, right? So one of the main things you need is to learn how to introduce yourself, right? Since networking events are hundreds of people or maybe thousands of people, they don't have time to listen to your entire life story. All right, so the question they're going to ask you is, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume, right? Something like that. So in order to answer this question, you're going to be obviously talking about yourself, but you need to make that really short, right? I recommend 3 to 5 sentences. That's it. That's all you get, right? Because they're not trying to listen to you all day. They're trying to talk to other people. So you need to condense your entire life story into 3 to 5 sentences. All right, so I'm going to give you a little cheat code here on how you can condense your entire life story into 3 to 5 sentences. Right? So the main things they want to hear is your past, your present, and your future. The past has to be something that you've done or something that you are doing that's kind of like in the past. So you can say something like, my name is Nash and I've been going to this university for the past 3 years and I've been a finance major. And you can also add things like, I've done 3 internships at this company, and that company. So once you're done with that, so you introduce your name, the university you go to, your major, and the internships that you've had while you were going to college, right? So that's about 1.5 sentences, I believe. I don't know, maybe 2, maybe less. Now, the second step is going to be the present, right? What are you doing right now? You can say, and I'm taking a risk management class. I'm also taking a banking class. So you talk about something that's going on. I'm also involved in the finance club. I'm the president of the finance club. I'm the vice president of finance for the investment club or anything like that. And if you are working or doing another internships, also say that. You can say you're going to school and you're also doing another internship at maybe JP Morgan or something like that. For this part, you pretty much talked about the classes you're taking. You talked about the clubs or organizations that you're involved in, including your positions in those organizations, because that's really important in showing that you have leadership skills. You can work with the team. And you also talked about if you're working or if you have another internship, right? So for the last part, you're going to be talking about the future. What are you planning to do? All right, so this is the easiest part. The first thing you want to talk about is when you graduate. When is your expected graduation? So you can say, I plan on graduating maybe summer of 2021, and my plans are to work in investment banking. So right now, I am doing a lot of networking, and I'm applying to different positions, and I'm looking for any opportunity in the industry. So that is how you can structure describing your future, the things you're planning to do. So all of that should fit in 3 to 5 sentences. The less, the better. You don't want one sentence though, maybe 2, 3, but 5 is the maximum you can go, because you do not want to take a lot of time, because the more you speak, the more they stop listening. All right, so that is pretty much it when it comes to that. So the next thing you need to know is going to be when it comes to your resume, how you can really structure your resume, right? So there's a lot of ways on how you can, design your resume, all of that. But when it comes to positions in finance, positions in business, you need to put a lot of numbers on there. All right, so we've already established that investment banking is really, really competitive, right? So you need to add anything that's going to make you stand out from other people, because if you're just relying on your 4.0 GPA, I can promise you that there are thousands of other applicants that have a 4.0 GPA. So that is not going to make you stand out. So some of the things you can add on your resume on the top is going to be the university that you went to. So if you went to an Ivy League or a prestigious university, or any university really, make sure you put the name of the university on there. And you also put the name of your degree. Maybe you got a degree in corporate finance, or just in finance, or in business administration. Make sure you add that on there. And after you add that information, the next part is going to be your academic performance, right? So this is going to include the GPA. Make sure you include the GPA, because most of the time, people that do not include their GPAs, they do not have a 4.0, so they don't want to, disclose that. So if you have a 4.0, make sure you put it on there, or 3.9, 3.7. I would recommend, from a 3.7 to a 4.0, you can put it on there. It's going to make you stand out compared to somebody that does not put their GPA on there. And the next thing you can put on there is going to be maybe some awards that you got. Maybe you got an academic scholarship, or you are on the president's list, or, things like that. Make sure to add those things on there. And you can also add some certifications. Let's say you worked on some certifications while you're in college. So make sure to add those on there, because those will definitely make you stand out compared to someone that does not have a certification. All right. So once you add all that academic performance information, the last part is pretty much going to be your work experience, right? So if you've worked in prestigious companies as well, make sure you add the name of the company and the position that you worked, right? So if you worked at JP Morgan as an analyst intern, you can add that JP Morgan analyst intern, and then you put the little bullet points with what you were doing. Make sure to include numbers when you're describing the work that you were doing. Maybe you were working on a budget for a project, and you want to include that in your description. For your internships, you can say, I worked on a $300 million budget for this project, which would impact this, and that. One of the things you want to avoid is saying, I worked on budgets. Like, how much was the budget? What was the budget for? And who was it going to? Who were you working with, right? You want to make it as tangible as possible, to the point where someone who's reading it can kind of like visualize what you were doing and the impact that it had. Yeah, so go ahead and list the name of the company, your position, and the bullet points describing what you were doing on there. And you want to make that as tangible as possible by including numbers. All right, so that's pretty much it when it comes to that. So the next thing I want to talk about is going to be, how can you actually get the interviews? So we talked a little bit about networking with alumni and all that. So there's also another option. Let's say your school does not have an alumni network. It's not really connected to the alumni. Some schools do have databases that show you people that graduated and what they're doing, but not every school has this. So what can you do? This is where I recommend using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is very resourceful. You can find anyone on LinkedIn and you can see what they do. You can look at their experience, where they have worked, where they went to school. You can even search using, your university. You can say, I'm looking for alumni from this university that are in finance. You can really narrow down your searches and you can find these alumni. So let's say you find an alumni that works in investment banking. Now, you want to connect with them. You want to network with them, right? So what you don't want to do is just message them and say, hey, I'm looking for an internship, right? That is not the way to go. I'm going to teach you how to be strategic with this. And this is something that I did my second year of college when I was looking for internships in the corporate finance field. All right, so I found the company on LinkedIn. So whenever you find the company, you're looking through the employees that you want to reach out to, one thing I recommend is trying to find somebody who's been working there for less than a year or maybe 2 years, because those are people that just graduated from college. They just got hired. They've been there for a year. They're more likely to want to help other college students. They kind of like understand everything that you're going through, and they're more likely to help you, and you probably get a response. What you don't want to do is message maybe the VP of finance or the CEO. You're not going to get a response, I'm telling you. All right, so let's say you find somebody that you want to message, right? So how do you structure the message in a way that you're not begging for a job or you're not begging for an internship? So one of the things I recommend is actually not asking for a job. You have to ask for help. So what you can do is you can introduce yourself. Obviously, hi, my name is Nash and I go to this university. I'm planning on graduating in the summer of 2021 and I'm studying finance. You can say you hope to work in investment banking. So you wanted to reach out to that person to see if they have any advice, right? That's the first thing you can do. Ask for advice. With this, you're asking for help, not asking for a job, right? So if there are open positions in the company, that person will probably tell you. So another way you can do this, you can actually send them your resume. I know on LinkedIn messages, you can attach a document. So what you can do is you can, introduce yourself and all that. And you can say you have attached your resume to the message and you like to get their insights on your resume. You like them to critique your resume, right? So you're not asking for a job, but in a way you're sending them your resume. They're going to be looking at your experience, right? So if there is an open position that fits your resume and that they are reading your resume, they're going to be like, this person is a good candidate for this position. They're going to be like, actually, your resume looks great. Fix this and that. But I recommend that you apply for this position that's open at the company. So that is how I got my corporate finance internship in my second year of college. I kind of like sent my resume and I asked for advice and insights on it. And then they ended up saying that there's an open position. And I knew there was an open position. That's why I was sending my resume and asking for pointers on it. But if you guys want to learn more about how to network on LinkedIn effectively, let me know in the comment section below and we can make a whole video on it because I feel like it's a topic that needs its own video. All right, so the last tip is going to be preparing for the interview. So when it comes to investment banking, that is where the smart people go, right? So you can imagine during the interview, on top of the regular interview questions, tell me about yourself, tell me your 3 strengths and weaknesses, just the little mumbo jumbo that you get. There are going to be a lot of technical questions, right? Because they are trying to eliminate as many people as possible, right? That are not qualified. The most important thing you need to focus on is going to be the technical skills. So these are going to be skills like accounting, and you also have valuation. You also have DCF modeling. You also have mergers and acquisitions. Those are the things you learn in college high-level finance classes. You need to literally go back and read your notes or look it up online, do some research, because they're going to ask you about mergers and acquisitions, right? And you're going to be like, what is that? And then you're eliminated because there's somebody else that knows it, because there's going to be someone else that knows what that is and they're going to get hired over you. Those are some of the technical skills that there's obviously more than that. So you do more research on some of the things and tools that I used in investment banking. You're definitely going to get asked those technical questions. And most of the time, there might be 10 different candidates and there's only one position open. Everyone is qualified for this position, but they only need one person, right? So they end up asking some of those technical questions in order to eliminate most people. But that is pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. If you plan on going into investment banking, if you work in investment banking, let me know if I missed anything in the comment section below. And also make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.